The ideas, procedures, and suggestions contained within this podcast are not intended as a substitute for consulting with a medical professional. All matters regarding your health and fitness require medical consultation and supervision. Welcome to the Warrior Wellness Podcast, a podcast for military members, veterans, and first responders focusing on fitness, health, nutrition, and biohacking. Our mission with this podcast is to introduce America's heroes to lifestyle habits and hacks that will help them live healthier, happier lives, and in turn, be fit enough to continue their support of their communities and country.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Warrior Wellness Podcast. So I'm excited to share this interview with you with Dr. Bill Schindler. Dr. Bill Schindler was actually on episode 3 of the Warrior Wellness Podcast. So we are so honored to have him back on the podcast. And the reason why we had him back is that we are so excited. He is finally, after working on his book for over a year, going to be releasing his book. It's launching on November 16th. So we're actually getting this podcast out the weekend before his book launch, and I'm going to be attending the book launch. So that's so exciting. We're fairly close to him right now on our little RV trip. So just all the stars aligned, and we were able to get him on. And the book, I'm so excited. I pre-ordered it. So definitely, if you are out there listening to me, go to the link in the show notes. Please support this amazingly smart human being. He is helping hundreds and thousands, and if not hundreds of thousands of people with his efforts. So let me introduce you. If you haven't listened to episode 3 of the Warrior Wellness Podcast, definitely go back and check out that episode. We kind of dive into his approach to you don't want to call it paleo, because it's not paleo, it's not keto, it's not carnivore, but it's more of just a kind of modern Stone Age type of eating. Basically, this guy is a food archaeologist, which is a really, really interesting job title. And he is the founder and director of the Modern Stone Age Kitchen, which actually is opening officially as a nonprofit next week as well, at the same time as his book launch. It's formerly called the Eastern Shore Food Lab, which it was associated with the Washington College, so now it's kind of a separate entity. And also Dr. Schindler just recently resigned his position as the Associate Professor of Anthropology and Archaeology at Washington College, so he could, in Chestertown, Maryland, so he could, focus on these efforts going forward to introduce more and more people around the world to this style of eating like a human. And we'll talk about what that means in the interview. So Dr. Schindler has probably been around. You've probably seen him on TV. He was the co-star of both National Geographic series, The Great Human Race, and Curiosity Stream's The Modern Stone Age Family. He is a food archaeologist, a primitive technologist, and chef. He travels the world documenting traditional foodways and works to draw inspiration from deep archaeological record, rich and diverse ethnographic records to apply that to a modern culinary approach. So he is a strong advocate for traditional foodways and is constantly seeking new ways to incorporate lessons learned from his research into the diets of modern humans. He has revolutionized the way in which he and his family eats, and attributes much of the health of his wife and his 3 children to the nutrient-dense, hunted, gathered, and fermented foods that comprise a significant portion of their diets. And they're introducing these techniques by running online classes, so you can actually take an online class with Dr. Schindler. Or if you live around the Chesterfield Chestertown area of Maryland, you can take a class in person with them and learn some of these techniques on making sure that your food is not only safe, but nutrient dense and bioavailable. And Dr. Bill Schindler has a new book, so that's why we had him on again. It's called Eat Like a Human. And he draws on his cutting edge science and a lifetime of research to explain how nutrient density and bioavailability are the center stones of a healthy diet. So it's not what you eat, it's how you prepare it. He shows readers how to live like a modern hunter-gatherer by using the same strategies our ancestors used, as well as techniques still practiced by many cultures around the world to make food as safe, nutritious, bioavailable, and, of course, what's important, delicious as possible. Each chapter of his book is dedicated to a specific food group. He has in-depth explanations of different foods and cooking techniques and takeaways, as well as 75 plus recipes. So you will come away with not only some techniques and why you should be doing this, but recipes on making sure that you can implement these in your life. I'm so excited about that. So Eat Like a Human promises that it will permanently change the way you think about food and help you live a happier, healthier, and more connected life. So make sure to order Dr. Schindler's book, Take Control of Your Health, Wellness, and Nutrition, and start eating like a human. So check out that link in the show notes. Go directly there, get your book, and change your nutrition. So I hope you enjoy this interview with Dr. Bill Schindler.
Introducing the new Fireteam Whiskey Fitness and Nutrition app. Everything you need to get fit and lose weight right at your fingertips. Choose from hundreds of fitness videos and fitness plans. Search for workouts by fitness level, equipment available, or body part focus. Choose from several nutrition plans and customize your macros. Your entire fitness, nutrition, and wellness plan all scheduled on your calendar. Text a trainer anytime for tips, tricks, and motivation. Achieve your fitness and health goals with the Fireteam Whiskey app. Go to www.fireteamwhiskey.com to get 2 weeks of results for free.
Well, Dr. Bill Schindler, thank you so much for yet again being on the Warrior Wellness Podcast. I think this is my second person I've ever had on twice, so that's awesome.
Really?
Thank you so much for reaching back out to us and letting us know. Of course, I keep up with your newsletters and everything that's going on with Eat Like a Human. So I found out that you have a brand new book finally coming out. So I was showing Dr. Schindler that I have it on pre-order. Ready to go. 3 more days, and just found out that I'm so close to him I may even get to go to the launch party, so that's exciting. So we're going to talk to Dr. Schindler about his book and what it's all about and why you should get it immediately and put it on pre-order like I did. So thank you so much.
Awesome. My pleasure. Thanks for having me back.
Fantastic. So your new book is called Eat Like a Human. I wonder where you got that title from.
And everything seems to be building around that message, Eat Like a Human. And we're thrilled. This is a 10-year project. Oh, actually, it's been a lifetime project, but really started to create this book about 10 years ago. And certainly the last few years, we've put it into overdrive. And I know we were just talking about this. I finally got to hold it for the first time a few days ago, and my whole family did. So it's been a wonderful journey, and I'm so happy to share the message with the rest of the world. The focus of the book, and we talked about this a little bit last time we spoke, but the focus of the book is really, it's decades worth of anthropological and archaeological research and trying to find ways to feed my family the most nourishing food possible has all culminated in this tagline or this logo or what have you, Eat Like a Human. And the quick backstory is I've spent my entire life trying to answer the question what I should be eating. And that's the question that anyone interested in diet and health is always asked. And it's an important question. It's one we should be asking. But the problem is we haven't found a solution yet or an answer to that question. And one of the reasons is because that's not the only answer only question we should be seeking an answer to. And in fact, you can't, as humans, we can't answer that question without the equally or even more important question, how should we be eating? One of the things that I found through all my work is that we as humans have one of the most inefficient digestive tracts of any animal on the planet. And what we require is processing of our food. And I mean real processing, not modern food industry, nasty, overly processed food processing. I mean the root of all the, using all the technologies that our ancestors used to transform raw materials into their safest and most nourishing forms possible for our incredibly inefficient and weak human bodies that, by the way, have enormous nutritional needs to operate properly. We are really good-sized mammals with incredibly large brains that require massive quantities of high-quality nutrition, and we don't have the digestive tract to allow us to take raw materials from the environment and fuel these bodies properly. So what we've done over millions of years is create technologies and behaviors to approach raw materials, transform that food into its safest and most nourishing forms possible, and then before it even goes into our mouths, then eat it, and then support high quality health in really meaningful ways. So this book, we talk a lot in this book about ancestral diets. We talk a lot in this book about high quality ingredients, but the majority of the book is focused on how to take these high quality ingredients and turn them into something that our bodies can really do something with.
Yeah, and we've gotten so far away. Now we talked about this in your last interview a little bit, but it just kind of struck me when you were talking. Unfortunately, of course, we have an obesity epidemic, in the United States and all over the world, really. But never before in history, and I think I'm kind of paraphrasing you, a quote that I read to you back in our last interview, have we had more obese people who are more nutritionally deficient. Yeah. So we're literally nutritionally starving, yet we're the most obese population that we've ever been on Earth. And I think unfortunately what we still hear pounded into our heads by fitness professionals, nutritionists, and the government and military and medical is just eat less. Yeah. It's just eat less and move more, and you'll be healthy. And this obviously isn't working because we've been told this for decades, and it's not working for most people. So can you talk a little bit about how we need to kind of come away from this concept of eating less and moving more, and how this isn't how our biology was designed?
No, not at all. And so thank you. The paraphrasing was perfect, and I love starting the conversation this way. I think what we need to do in order to even have this conversation is step away from all the mantra from the modern nutritional world, and like you just said, and even the stuff that's shoved down our throats from shows like The Biggest Loser, where 99% of the show is based on people working out really hard, and like 1% is based on doing something with diet. And it makes sense why that's the message, because we want, and it's all about money, right? We want to have the food manufacturing world wants to have themselves, with the value add that they do to food, get sold, and they make massive amounts of money. People think they might be doing something healthy, but they're actually getting more obese and more malnourished. And then we sell gym memberships, and they go and work out. And this cycle that we're in, even though it just keeps getting reinforced through the media and through diet guides and all this, isn't working, and it's the exact wrong approach. So if we take a step back real quick, a huge step back, and look at the way that we've eaten for millions of years and the diets that literally built us as a species, we see something completely different. The focus of all the technologies and approaches to food for millions of years was not, how can I eat all day long and not get fat, which is what we try as modern Americans to do now, right? Which means you have to buy nutrient-free food so you can keep eating and hopefully not get fat. It was the exact opposite. Is how can I get the most amount of high-quality nutrition from whatever environment I'm in and fuel my body to make it act optimally and achieve incredibly true health while doing the least amount of work. And from that modern mindset of, hey, I need to eat less and work out really hard, it's a huge, huge complete, turning that on its head to say, hey, how can I get the most amount into my body while doing the least amount of work? It's really hard to comprehend that. But if you think about it, all the technologies that, and one of the reasons that it may sound strange, but me as an archaeologist starting to get involved with this is that I came to the realization that almost every single prehistoric technology, which is what archaeologists spend their time looking at, are these ancient technologies and tools, almost every single prehistoric technology has something to do with food, getting food, processing food, cooking food, storing food, whatever. And when you think about that and say almost, all of our brain power, all of our ancestral brain power was focused on creating technologies to extract the most amount of nutrition from these foods and put it in a state that our bodies can do something with. And we've done this for millions of years, and we've done it so well that our bodies grew and our brains grew, that it really speaks to the importance of those technologies and that real value add of real true food processing. So what we've done is and started out simply as things like stone tools and fire, and later things like hunting and butchering technologies, and then things like fermentation and nixtamalization, and a whole host of technologies to allow us to do this. As we created each of these technologies and incorporated them into our dietary sort of way we approach the world, our foods became safer, they became more nutrient dense, and they became more bioavailable. And as we did that, we literally created the species, Homo sapiens. We created ourselves because of these technologies, and we created ourselves both in biological and cultural ways. We are a product of our ancestral diets. Now, I do want to pause real quick and just say, I am not one of these people who think that we need to take, or that it's even realistic to take a diet from 200,000 years ago and put it on our tables today and it's going to make sense. It doesn't. We have this sort of saying around here at the Modern Stone Age Kitchen. We say it's not about eating like a caveman, it's about eating like a human again. And that takes into account all of our biological and cultural and emotional needs at the same time, which is how you really generate real genuine health. But if you look at that ancestral track on, getting more and more high quality nutrition in a state that our bodies can have access to it without working really, really hard, and if that's the focus, then we are doing it wrong. Right? Because, and we might have talked about this last time, but there was a study several years ago where they looked at grocery stores across the country and looked at all the processed food and what was being advertised and marketed to consumers. And something like 80% of all the packaged processed food in the grocery store was advertising what it didn't have in it. Right? It was fat-free, carb-free, gluten-free, whatever free. And really, we are modeled. The way we think about, most of us don't forage and hunt and even cook all of our meals entirely from scratch any longer. So we have to rely on getting our information from other people. And unfortunately, even things like product placement in the grocery store, or things that are in the grocery store and things that aren't in the grocery store, how they're labeled, how they're marketed, consciously and unconsciously impact the way we think about food, diet, and health. And if everything that we're seeing shoved down, the thing that is great about this product is that it doesn't have something in it, then we start to think about our food and our diet in that same way. And instead of saying, hey, I want to get the most amount of X, Y, and Z in my diet, I'm thinking, hey, I don't want to have this, I don't want to have this, and these are the products I should be spending all of my hard-earned money on. So one of the first things I think we need to do is get back to that approach to food where we have these raw materials, these incredible high quality ingredients. We understand that almost all of them are not, that we are not designed to consume almost all of them in their raw natural state. And then we start approaching them in the right way to make them as safe and nourishing as possible. And the focus needs to be on nutrient density and bioavailability. And really, there is really no reason we should be eating a food that has nothing in it. There's nothing, and it's a complete mind shift change, but it will, I can guarantee you, transform your health if you approach it that way.
Yeah, exactly. And you talk about bioavailability, and there's more and more coming out in the last few years about the microbiome and how incredibly important it is, and how our way of eating these ultra processed foods, these nutrient derivative foods, are really killing not only our health, but our microbiome, and affecting all sorts of different health conditions. And we've seen these upticks of these certain chronic health conditions because we have for decades now been mainly a processed food eating society. So can you talk a little bit about, kind of what you're talking about, eating like a human, and how that kind of naturally takes care of itself when you start focusing on, taking these ultra processed foods out of your life, and you are processing foods, like you point out, it has to be processed in order for our pretty non-efficient digestive system to deal with foods, but how this kind of goes hand in hand with that.
Sure. So the first thing I think we need to do is define the difference between the food processing that I'm talking about and the food processing that both of us keep talking about, with this highly processed part of the modern industrial food system that is something we shouldn't have in our diet. The difference is the food and I wish we could find a different word. It's the right word, but I wish we could have two words so you can easily tell the difference between the two. The food processing that I'm talking about is where you take a raw material and whatever procedure you put it through, or technologies you use. And again, some of these can be super simple. It can be everything from slicing and dicing, or putting it in a blender, to cooking, to fermenting, to whatever. That is done for the purposes to do three things: to make food safe. And I know that may seem really strange. I'm not talking about safe. I mean, I'm always talking about things like safe that it won't kill you, but I'm talking about making sure that food is going into your body in a way that it is creating absolutely no harm whatsoever. And really, when we're talking about plants, it's something we need to be aware of. And I hope we can get to that in a minute. But the technologies do three things. There's food processing technologies that are good: make food safe, make food as nutrient dense as possible, and make food as bioavailable as possible. In other words, you're going to eat it and it's not going to do bad things to your body. You're going to eat it and it's going to be packed, chock full of nutrition, and you're going to eat it, and that nutrition is going to be usable by your body. Remember, we have this incredibly inefficient digestive tract. We have this idea as modern humans somehow that if you put food into your mouth, automatically all the nutrition goes to wherever it needs to be. And it's not, that isn't true. And again, we may have talked about this before, but Stephen Gundry in Plant Paradox gave a great example of this. He said, listen, when you put food into your body, it's like going into the Lincoln Tunnel. It doesn't go in, when you put it in your mouth, it's like going into the Lincoln Tunnel. It's like, the only thing you're guaranteed is that you're going to come out the other end of the tunnel. So if you're in New Jersey, you're going to come out in Manhattan. You don't go into the Hudson River. And that's what your digestive tract is like. You're trying to get those nutrients into the Hudson River. You're trying to get those nutrients in your body, not just out the other end. So vegetables are a great example. Some vegetables have awesome nutrition in them, but most of that nutrition is locked up and inaccessible to our bodies unless we do the right things to those plants in order to have access to that nutrition. So that's the bioavailability part. So safety, nutrient density, bioavailability. On the other hand, most of the modern food processing today is at the expense of literally all three of those things. And number one, safety. And I'm not talking about things like E. coli that can make you incredibly sick and kill you, or listeria, or those kinds of things, which the modern food industry would make you think it's taking these grandiose steps to take care of. And in some cases they do. I'm talking about other food safety issues that can build up over time and cause massive chronic disease or pain or illness, which it's not taking care of. In fact, it's making that worse. It doesn't care about nutrient density. In fact, it's boasting about the nutrients that aren't in that food. And number three, the bioavailability. In most cases, it's doing things that make the nutrients in there even more inaccessible to our bodies. So the food processing of the modern food industry is focused on profit purely at the expense of your health. That's why this book is arming the readers with taking back control of their food system and being able to do these things in their own home to use these ancestral practices to make the food as nourishing as possible. So I forget the question. Sorry.
No, we were talking about digestion, how this,
right.
Your approach to nutrition actually kind of takes care of these gut issues, the bioavailability, the gut permeability, all of these issues, these key words that we keep hearing thrown out in the nutrition world nowadays, and we're all very concerned about because they're just on the rise. All of these gastrointestinal issues are on the rise, and in turn the autoimmune diseases, and so we're concerned about this in the nutritional world. So you're talking about a way of eating that takes care of that, because you are doing the three things that you talked about: the safety, the bioavailability, and what was the second one?
The nutrient density.
The nutrient density. You're taking care of these things. But I do want to jump on the plants thing, because I think what people do is when they hear you speak, they think, oh, he's just, he's talking about those way of eating. I couldn't eat like that, just like all raw vegetables and raw meat, and it's like a plop of raw meat on my plate and a bunch of crap load of raw vegetables. I can't eat anything else, and that is not what you're talking about. So I definitely encourage you to follow Dr. Bill Schindler and what he does with the food preparation, and we'll talk about what you're involved in with that. And I mean, I'm seeing like pizza and tacos and all these amazing, like my mouth is just watering like right now. Like I just got like the Pavlov response. Like I just started drooling, like of all the amazing foods that you are showing that you are making in your kitchens on a weekly basis. So, I think just kind of addressing the misnomer of, oh, he's just talking about like me just having to eat a bunch of rabbit food and, never get to enjoy anything tasty.
When you look good, you feel good. Guys, it's about time you threw away those stained t-shirts and those baggy, saggy shorts and upgrade your gym swagger. Zaya Active is the official workout wear of Fireteam Whiskey. Go to bit.ly/ZayaFTW and check out all the styles for women, men, and kids.
Now, it's so funny. The two things I'd like to say before I really dive in deep into that. Number one, there was a year of my family's life, and it was, I don't know, it was maybe about 8 or 10 years ago, where every single thing that we ate for the entire year was harvested, butchered, cooked entirely from scratch in-house. I mean, literally everything. We foraged, we hunted, we butchered, we fermented, everything. We made all of our cheese and all of our butter, all of our everything. And biologically, we as a family may have been the healthiest we've ever been that year. And I know for me, as somebody who's so interested in these things and trying to gain, as much hands-on experience as possible, it was a lifetime worth of knowledge that I gained in 1 year from doing all this. But my family was far from healthy that year. And because, and we alluded to this earlier, real genuine health for humans through food comes from a combination of, meeting our biological needs, but also our emotional and cultural needs as well. The stress level in that house that year, because everything took so much time. And if all we had to do was feed ourselves, it would have been fine. But we're also, the kids are in school and I was teaching and my wife has a career and we had soccer practice and dance and all this. It just isn't possible. So I am not sitting here suggesting that you, in order to feed your family and nourish them properly, you have to cook everything 100% from scratch and do X, Y, and Z. It's not possible. And in fact, it may work counter to achieving the goals you're really looking to achieve. So that's number one. And it's not just raw meat on a plate. It definitely isn't raw vegetables anywhere, which is in many cases incredibly dangerous. Because the food has to provide you pleasure. And this is the second thing I was going to mention real quick. Eating is one of the three sensual experiences, truly sensual experiences that humans have in their lives. And there's three. It's food, it's safety, and it's sex. And it makes complete sense. These are our I mean, when I say sensual, I mean sensual meaning that you're using all of your senses at the same time.
Mhm.
And these are evolutionary responses to situations we find ourselves in that are hardwired in us, because as a species, the only thing we have to do is, as a species, to make sure we don't go extinct, is to reproduce viable offspring, and those offspring reproduce viable offspring. That means we have to do those three things right. We have to reproduce properly, we have to nourish ourselves and our young properly, and we have to make sure everybody stays safe until childbearing age, and then that next round stays safe until childbearing age. So it makes sense why they're all so sensual. And all of them, if you do them right, they feel incredibly good, and if you do them wrong, they feel incredibly bad. And it's supposed to be that way. That's how it's worked. Now, if we come at food and eating and getting healthy through dietary changes, we have to also forget that idea that I think so many of us believe that if we want to lose weight or if we want to get healthy, we have to go through some sort of pain or feeling like we're going without something.
Right.
Like we sit down, and if we get up from a table and if we're not still hungry, we feel like we've done something wrong, because of course,
Right.
if we're going to lose weight, we should feel hungry. That's the exact opposite way it should be. I mean, think about how crazy that is. If everything that we're hardwired to do is focused on being as healthy as possible, if we're taking steps towards becoming more healthy, it should feel incredibly good, not bad at all. So a goal should be, every time you get up from a table, you should feel better than the time from when you sat down at that table, right? And biologically and emotionally and culturally, you should feel better. That's the goal. And if that's your goal, my God, what a life you're living, and you're taking steps towards getting healthier through that. So the idea that if you're trying to lose weight, you should feel hungry is wrong. You should feel satiated after every single meal. You should feel good after every single meal. You shouldn't feel like you have to, take off your pants and put on sweatpants because you're bloated. That you shouldn't feel that either. But you should feel awesome after every meal. The food should taste good. Remember, these are sensual experiences. There is nothing about eating that shouldn't be pleasant if we're trying to get healthy, because we're hardwired to make the right decisions about this, right? So back to your raw meat and your raw vegetables. No, we should look at a plate of food, and we should be proud to take the right raw materials, put it through the right series of steps and processing to put that food on the table. And if it truly meets all the expectations of being healthy and nourishing and safe, bioavailable, and nutrient dense, it should also look good and smell good and taste good and please our palate and have the right texture. And for some foods, it should even sound good. And this is what we should be striving to achieve. And that is the kind of health that we're preaching about. Preaching is the right word about in this book. So no, raw vegetables on a plate and just a hunk of bleeding meat and forcing ourselves to eat it is not the kind of thing we're looking at.
Yeah. And you touched upon something so important. Two things. We've been taught by society and the medical world and the modern weight loss approach, to ignore our body's signals. When we're craving something, or when we don't feel good after we ate something, or we feel just lethargic and bloated and inflamed, and we're taught to ignore that. And we're taught, if we're trying to lose weight, to ignore hunger signals, and to eat less, and you've got to finish your meal and not and still be hungry, and we get those messages pounded into our head. And even with medications, it's like, well, you have a headache, take a Tylenol. It's like, well, but why do you have a headache? Like nobody ever questions, well, are you dehydrated? Did you not sleep well? Are you feeling stressed? Are you do you need to eat?
Right.
There's like 200 reasons why you have a headache, but there's no thought about where the headache come from. It's just cover the symptom, and so that's kind of how we've been taught to approach our lives. and listening to the body signals. They're there for a reason biologically. I mean, that's what they were designed to do, was to send those signals to our brains, and for us to understand that there is a need there. And when we're not getting those needs met through our food, then our body's going to start sending us stronger and stronger signals, right?
Yep, absolutely. And we literally, not at birth, but not long after birth, for the entirety of our lives, we are taught to not listen to our bodies. I mean, think about what it's like. And unfortunately, it was like it in our house too. I wish I knew better then. But just think about the kid in the high chair that just got weaned and are starting to eat baby food, and we are forcing, cream spinach down their throat, and they're spitting it up across the room. I mean, we've normalized that, and we make jokes about it. There's cartoons about it, and sitcoms about it. But the reality is something's wrong. Like, other animals don't do that. Right? No other animal on the planet does that. That kid, our children, when they're hungry, they should be eating and smiling, and pleasant, happy about it. But instead, we're forcing down their throats what the modern food industry is telling us we should be feeding our kids, and they're literally spitting it up in our faces, and we are still listening to people telling us that we should be literally shoving it down their throats. So, and we are forcing those kids, our own kids, to not pay attention to their own body signals. And then, and on top of that, as we get older, the food that and it is almost impossible, even if that didn't happen to us, to today fully listen to our body signals if we're eating some of this ultra processed food, because they literally have millions and billions of dollars pumped into labs. People in white lab coats with test tubes are playing around with our senses, those evolutionary responses that we've built over millions of years to help us inform how we should be eating, when we should stop eating, when we should start eating, how much food we should be eating. And they are tweaking food to play on all those evolutionary responses so that they can make money. And we're left here with, what do we do? So we have to hire people, we have other people to tell us how to eat. It shouldn't be that way. So, one thing that I suggest several different things to start to overcome this lifetime of being forced away from trying to listen to our bodies, is number one, do everything you can to eat the most nourishing meal possible at least once in your life. I mean, you need that baseline, because so many of us, maybe truly, and I know this sounds really weird and really dark, but I think there's so many of us that have never had one truly nourishing meal and know what it feels like to do exactly what I said a few minutes ago, to get up and feel wholly nourished at the end of it. And I mean, again, biologically and emotionally and culturally nourished all at the same time. And then when you do that, that should be your baseline. You should strive for every meal to feel like that. And I know, listen, I understand it. We have a lot of things happening in our lives, and there's a lot of different factors that influence how and when and what we eat. You're not going to hit it every time, but that should be the goal. The second thing is, so many of us are so disconnected from our food, where it comes from, how it's made, how to make it as nourishing as possible. And I know we talked about this a little bit last time, and this is really what this book is about. Take a food that you and your family eat all the time, and make it entirely from scratch. And then not only does that become one of those nourishing meals, it creates that baseline, but what goes into that food, how to tweak it, how to make it as nourishing as possible. And then even if you never make it again, you go to the grocery store and you can see through the marketing and advertising, and you know which versions of those of that food to purchase. You use your money to help support the food manufacturers that are actually doing a good job. And then you've taken a huge leap forward in nourishing your family a lot better than may be happening at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a very good point, Dr. Schindler. That the big food industries have spent billions of dollars in biohacking those receptors in your brains, and those things that were built in for a reason in our biology to help our ancestors, find the most nourishing foods and continue to eat those. But unfortunately, our modern food society has hacked into that process and created these ultra addictive foods. So, sure, you may feel fantastic when you're gobbling down a pint of ice cream like I used to do in the moment, but boy, it doesn't feel good after that with the crash of the blood sugar crash and the consequences of but it's really, really sad to see the waves of destruction that food addiction has created in our society. I mean, not only just the secondary, the health issues, but how hard a grip this has on people, and how it literally is an addiction that is created. And unfortunately, when you're just told to eat less and move more, that does not get to those mechanisms that we're literally battling biologically, those chemical reactions in your brain that turn on the dopamine and the good feel stuff. And, ooh, this is delicious. I need more, 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 more. And your body is just sending you those really powerful signals that you want more. But you literally are, you see this and people get very judgmental about people who are obese, but you have to understand that they literally are starving, and their brains believe that they are starving, and they keep sending the signals to eat more and more and more. And it's a very, very strong signal because it's a survival instinct, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that a couple things are really important. One is most species eat to a protein threshold. Like, they eat to satisfy a basic necessity of life. And typically that's protein. And there's been a lot of studies done with a lot of different animals, including humans. And when you change the makeup of their diet, the macronutrient makeup of their diet, they still will eat until they reach a certain protein threshold. And with humans, it's a little bit more complicated than that. But if even a fraction of it is true, and you're eating a diet that is filled with carbohydrates, you can eat carbohydrates all day long, and your body is starving for this basic essential need of protein, and you're going to continue to eat and continue to eat and continue to eat, and you're in many cases never going to reach that. It's the same thing. One of the most important things, and one of the in the human bodies, especially for our children, that we've been told for years we shouldn't have in our diets, and we need it, and we need it in the right way, is high quality fats. And we're literally starving our kids from that as they're getting more obese, because we're giving them all this bread and crackers and chips and all these other sorts of things. They're not getting the protein they need. They're not getting the right kind of fat that they need, and they are literally starving. And it's hard because visually they're getting bigger, whether they're just getting taller, but they're just getting bigger and more obese, and they're literally starving on the inside. And we need to do a much, much, much better job. And it comes with that mindset we talked about earlier, that our focus should not be eating food without something. Our focus should be eating food with things in it.
You're right. And it's funny that you say that foods without, and all the marketing, this doesn't have this, and you see the fat free, right? And we went through that fat free era, and you see what happened now because as a result of that. But when I'm working with my clients, and they, especially with women, they usually come in doing the fat-free thing. And I always ask them just a simple question. Well, okay, they took the fat out of this. What's left? Or what are they adding, to make it taste better? Because fat is a very satiating, makes things taste really good. I mean, the difference between, like, I'm a ribeye lover, right? I mean, I love a ribeye because it's a fatty piece of meat. It's much more flavorful than a leaner cut of meat, right? So I'm like, I just asked a simple question. Well, what's left? Most of the time it's just carbohydrates, and then they add, things to it, like sugar usually, to make it taste better, because they took the fat out that makes it, that kind of naturally makes things taste good. So yeah, always being aware of, if it says it's free of something, what else did they add to it, or what's left, and so, I want for you to talk about, and I'm sure you address this in your book, because you probably hear this a lot. People get very concerned about, this is just, it's too expensive to eat well. It's expensive to buy, organic produce, or it takes too much time to, prepare these foods. It's just so much easier to buy a frozen whatever and just, plop it in the oven or the microwave and eat it. Which is true. It is much more convenient. But can you kind of address that? I'm sure you've come across this a lot where, people argue that it's too expensive, it's too time consuming. I just can't do it.
Are you Fire Team ready? Try the Fire Team Whiskey Spec Ops Keto Joe Shake. The Keto Joe Shake is a medium-chain triglyceride MCT shake derived from non-GMO coconut oil. It contains 17 grams of MCT, 10 grams of high-quality whey protein, and no sugar. It's sweetened with stevia leaf, so you can keep those carbs low and shred that body fat. 25 milligrams of caffeine to give you extra energy for the gym or your busy day. Fire Team Whiskey has been supplying military members deployed all over the world with Spec Ops shakes for over 3 years. Fire Team Whiskey Spec Ops shakes are fueling the fight. Whether you are just trying to lose a few pounds or trying to get that extra edge in the gym, the Fire Team Whiskey Spec Ops shakes are for you. Make sure to stock up now and support our efforts to raise funds for Team RWB, our nonprofit partner that provides social support and fitness events for our nation's heroes.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as the expense is concerned, and what I was attempting to do here, and I hope I did it, was make a book that is accessible as possible and meaningful and as relevant to as many people as possible. So real quick, before we get to the expense part, that's an important piece of it. It is not preaching a, carnivore diet or a carnivore approach or this approach. I have very strong feelings about the importance of animals in our animals and the entirety of the animal in our diets, certainly. But the really cool thing about the way that I approached it here is that no matter what you base your diet on, whether you're a carnivore or a pescatarian or a vegetarian or a vegan or whatever, by implementing these approaches to making that raw material that's the focus of your diet into something else, you're making it as safe and nourishing as possible. So you're improving your diet without having to change a whole bunch of things that you truly believe in. So that's one piece. But as far as the other accessibility piece of it, doing this is cheaper than buying that food, right? That food already made for you. Now, certainly between, there's a lot of different things that would go into making that processed food cheap. Government subsidies on grains and mass production is obviously has a different is at a different scale than smaller production, so that makes it a little bit cheaper. All the fillers and all that other stuff makes it a little bit cheaper. Low quality ingredients make it a little bit cheaper. But in general, every step that a food producer takes is what we call a value add. They're doing something to a raw material, and because they've done this, they can charge a higher price. Mm-hmm. And if you take control of that yourself in your house, then theoretically you should be able to take a raw material for a heck of a lot cheaper than that food, put it through that process, and not only have saved money, but you have a much more nourishing, and appealing and delicious and whatever product at the end of it. So right away, the first thing I would say is, in addition to the connection and the knowledge and all the nourishing aspects of taking control of these things in your own home, you also have the ability to take, number one, the same raw material that a food manufacturer is taking and create a food for less money than you can buy it, you can buy it for. But here's the next step, though, because that's not just it, because we should always be striving to nourish ourselves as best as possible. You can then start, as you learn the process and understand how these foods are made and really incorporate them into you and your family's lives, then you can start taking that money that you're saving and buying the higher quality ingredients, right? So at the end of the day, you can end up with this food that, and I know so many, and I used to be the same way. I used to say, man, I want to go to a restaurant because they can make it taste so much better than I can at my own house, or I want to buy it at the grocery store because they can make it so much better than I can make it in my own house. And it's the exact opposite. When you know how to make it properly and not take the shortcuts, but do it the right way, the end product looks better, tastes better, smells better, is more satiating, is more nourishing, all of that, and it is cheaper. And you can take that money you're saving and then buy, then you can really start to dump it into the things that you really believe in, like, getting the most grass-fed, small farm, organic beef, or, these amazing eggs from somebody really local that are treating their chickens really, really well, or those sorts of things, high quality raw milk from a local producer. And then really everything starts to come together at the same time. So I do truly believe in all the nutritional parts of this, but also the financial parts of it are extremely important as well. But it's not only for you, right? I mean the people who are listening,
right.
Or all of us. It's not only for the consumer, and the mother or the father, who's cooking at home, that's saving, that there's financial implications for. When you're buying the raw materials directly from a farmer, or only one step away, or at a farmer's market, or what have you, you are, first of all, they get more money by selling it directly than they do by putting it through that sort of wholesale, modern food industry. And you're also making sure that you're paying the money's going to the people who are actually doing things the right way. So not only are you saving money, but the people that we want to be supporting are the ones that are getting supported.
Exactly. Yeah. And I've had the pleasure of experiencing that for myself over the last 2 years. We've been traveling over 2 years in our RV. And that is basically what we did. We, in travels, we just find a local butcher, farmer's market, and, produce stands, and we're eating 90% local. We actually are connecting with the foods. This pork was slaughtered right down here at the farm, this farm right down the road, and this produce came from here. And I can definitely tell you, after 2+ years of eating that way, I'm healthier, leaner, both of us, my husband as well, than we've ever been in our lives. And, and we were buying pretty good quality foods from, like our local fresh market or Whole Foods, but I definitely have seen a difference with just having that kind of closer connection. Because if you think about it, as soon as that plant is pulled off the plant, or that the animal's butchered, there is a process of kind of it's starting to break down. It's dying basically. So we've got to eat it as soon as possible after it dies, right? So that's what it was designed to do. Our ancestors, a food didn't travel 1,000 miles to get to their plate. It was from right here. I found it when I was foraging today, or we just slaughtered it like literally, 2 hours ago. So, you don't have to go out and go hunting and slaughter your own meat, or, go out and fish. Although that's the freshest fish I ever had, was the fish that I've caught myself.
Sure. So
if you can do that, fantastic. But, Dr. Schindler introduces you to some ways where you can kind of start small, and especially support your local farms and produce growers. And, you're not buying into those big box markets where, your food traveled 3,000 miles to get to you. So what happened along the way? You have no control over that. And it's literally dying on the way to you before you purchase it and gets onto your plate. So, shortening that time window as much as possible between it coming off the plant or being slaughtered and getting into your mouth would be the ideal situation. Plus, you're putting your money towards those people who, can continue to provide these high quality foods to us. And, maybe one day in a beautiful world, we won't have big box grocery stores anymore. We'll just have small local farmers markets. But, hopefully that'll happen in our lifetime. I'm not sure, but
it's so funny too, because we think it's such the norm now, but the first supermarket was in, I think, 1908 or so. It was a Piggly Wiggly. I mean, it's only been a little over 100 years that we've had supermarkets, and very short period of time that we've had big box stores like Costco and BJ's. And we've so quickly, that's the norm. And anybody fishing or fishing for food for dinner, or foraging, or hunting and butchering their own animals. That seems so strange, but that's the way that it's been for millions of years. And we do need to get back to it. And you have left a trail by doing what you've done. You've literally left a trail of support across this country. And, when you also think about it, you've, by purchasing your food this way and this directly, we call it, taking links out of the food chain, right? Getting closer to the source. You have, first of all, I truly believe that's the safest food system possible, is one where you are literally engaging with the person that's raised those animals or raised those plants or what have you. But you're also, think about the packaging and the fuel and all the other things that you're taking out of that system that are necessary. And it's not only what you see on the shelf. Like if you get a box of lettuce, or one of those little containers of lettuce that have to get gassed so that it doesn't, it's all wrapped in plastic, but those plastic containers all came, in a case with a box, and all those boxes were sitting on top of a pallet, and that pallet was usually wrapped in massive quantities of plastic wrap so it didn't fall. Then that went onto a truck, and then all the fuel, and then shipped all over the country. You're getting rid of all that, and doing it one time may not seem like a big deal, but making that part of your daily routine, the amount of support that you provide, and the amount of what you do to keep a lot of that packaging and all that other stuff out of the system is massive. It's a huge change.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about your book a little bit. So who needs to read your book, and what are they gonna learn when they get your book next week when it releases?
Anyone who wants to nourish themselves or their families through the most connected, purposeful, meaningful, sustainable, and ethical diet possible should read this book. And that was my goal. I've spent a lifetime trying to learn these approaches and these skills and techniques to feed my own family, and it's worked, and myself, and it's worked so incredibly well. I'm 48 years old now. I'm in the best shape of my life. I was a Division I athlete. I wrestled for Ohio State, and I'm in better shape now than I was then in my late teens and early 20s. I feel incredibly connected to my world, my community, my food, my family, and myself in ways that I never did before. And it is all a result of how me and my family approach our food. I believe truly in this approach, and my wife and I just wanted to share it with the world. And that's really why was the impetus for this book. And I try to do it in the most meaningful and accessible way possible. So what you'll get out of this book, the first chapter provides a foundation, sort of a baseline for everything else that builds on top of that. And to me, it's the most comprehensive, in-depth, but accessible look into our ancestral dietary past, those diets that literally built us as a species. So I spend one chapter literally looking at just that. What does that diet or those diets look like over the past 3.5 million years that allowed our species to be created and to populate the world? And that is the baseline. And then every chapter after that takes a specific food group or category. I have a chapter on plants, a chapter on animals, a chapter on grains, a chapter on maize, these sorts of things. And each individual chapter dives deep into that particular food, dairy, those sorts of things. All of the, a little bit of prehistory and history to talk about, how we are where we are now with that food, why we're have issues and troubles surrounding it. And then every single chapter ends with a whole host of tips and techniques and recipes to take all of these lessons we can get from this research and apply them in your kitchen with the most basic of tools and equipment that you have to actually put. And also in addition. Can you hear me okay? Because
yeah, you cut out there for a minute. Yeah.
But yeah, okay.
Yeah.
What we've been able to do is create this approach to food that has nourished my family, and then we've written this book to share it with the world, and we're really focused on educating and inspiring as much as possible. But we also have a lot of people that have been coming to us say, listen, I believe in all this. This is great. And take classes from us or learn from us or hear a podcast or what have you. But I just don't have the time to do all of it myself. And I really want all of this food. So what we launched it this past June is we launched the Modern Stone Age Kitchen here in Chestertown, Maryland, where we're taking literally all of these approaches and recipes from the book and making it in-house here and helping to feed the community here. And it's great. And you mentioned earlier, there's some things in the book that I really want to push limits in the right way so that we're really addressing the problems and getting at the answers. So there's a chapter on insects. There's a chapter on geophagy, which is the intentional consumption of earth. There's a chapter that's titled wood ash or clay ash and charcoal, something, I forget the exact title, where we're pushing the limit a little bit because these were all things that were parts of our ancestral diets that are not a part of any modern Westerners diet today, but we really should have at least a conversation about them and start to step in those. But there's a lot of, most of the recipes in this book resemble something you're used to eating. Regular, right. Cheese or bread or tacos or pizza, which is what we're creating here, but we're doing it in the healthiest version possible, the most safe, nutrient dense and bioavailable versions possible. So here we're actually making this book come to life for our customers. And I don't know if anybody follows us on Instagram. We even took the logo, our logo, which is an ancient stone axe, a modern chef's knife, and a fire behind it. And we made it 3-dimensional, real life, 5 feet tall, and just hung it on the side of the building. So it's really cool to see all this stuff come to life at the same time.
That's so exciting. I am so excited to read your book, and we will definitely include the link to go ahead and pre-order it for sure. It launches this coming week. So what is your favorite recipe? I can't wait for the recipes, by the way. That's exciting to me. But what is your favorite recipe that you included in the book?
Wow, that's a great question. Oh my gosh, I don't. Okay, you know what? My favorite recipe. Well, can I give you 2? Okay,
of course.
So, the chapter on maize or corn is a really important chapter because corn or maize is the staple of so many diets around the world, and historically it was incredibly nutritious. But the way we deal with it today can lead to all sorts of issues. And I have in there a very accessible way to take advantage of a minimum 4,000-year-old process to make maize as nourishing and bioavailable as possible to the human body. And then from there, we can make everything from grits to corn nuts to tortillas, out of it using that ancestral process, but doing it on your stovetop in your own house. So that's number 1. And number 2, is the fermented French fries. Potatoes by themselves have all sorts of issues, glycoalkaloids, lectins, oxalates, all sorts of problems. But we use a fermentation method to detoxify that potato as much as possible, and then through fermentation, and then fry it in high quality animal fat and make the most nourishing and delicious French fries you'll ever have in your life.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so good. And
so come on Tuesday, and then we'll have them ready for you.
I know. I'm like, I'm definitely going to this launch party because I need to try that. And I can definitely say I have always had issues with corn. And I mean, if I have anything with corn in it, I will have to run to the bathroom within 30 minutes. So I'm interested to see, try some of your maize approaches and see how that affects me, because I've always had an issue with that.
Please let me know. Absolutely.
Yeah. I am so excited about your book, and I can't wait for the launch party. So I'm going to head out there just to try those fries.
Awesome.
But thank you so much, Dr. Schindler, for coming on the Warrior Wellness podcast again. We will drop all the links to the book, of course, and I'll be sure to get this podcast out actually this weekend so we can get that ahead of your book launch and get the word out about this amazing book. And congratulations. What a huge accomplishment.
Hey guys, thanks so much again for joining us on another episode of the Warrior Wellness podcast. Please make sure to subscribe, follow, like, all that good stuff on your favorite podcast platform and on our YouTube channel. Go ahead and leave us a review while you're there. And if you screenshot your review, email it to info@fireteamwhiskey.com with your name and address. You'll be entered into our drawing for a prize for just leaving us a review. So let us know what we're doing great, what you'd like to hear more about, and please go ahead and just give us a follow and give us a honest review, especially on iTunes, because that helps us reach other military members, veterans, and first responders with this vitally important information about how to improve their health, fitness, and wellness. We will see you at the next episode of the Warrior Wellness Podcast. I am your podcast host, former Army Captain Stephanie Lincoln, founder of Fire Team Whiskey. Fire Team Whiskey is proud to sell Zaya athletic wear. We love the awesome styles, amazing quick dry technology, and best of all, the price. Zaya Active is the official workout wear of Fire Team Whiskey. Go to bit.ly/ZayaFTW and check out all the styles for women, men, and kids.